In this short talk today, I'm going to discuss a paper I wrote for Discourse called Reframing Responsibility in an Era of Responsibilisation: Education, Feminist Ethics and an Idiom of Care. What I hope to do is to give an account of the three contexts which framed and motivated that paper and shaped the kinds of arguments I explored and throughout it. The first context was a series of oral history interviews I'd been undertaking with former teachers working in Victorian high schools during the 1950s. As I listened to those teachers talk to me about the important or sort of pivotal moments in their teaching career and the memories that stayed with them, I was struck by a very strong sense of their view of social responsibility, of teaching as caught up in social responsibility and care for others, and a strong account of the vocation of teaching. That seemed to me to not fit into the ways in which a responsibility was now being discussed in education, and particularly the ways in which the dominance that I saw, at least, of the discourse of responsibilisation was entering into critical accounts of education and the self. I wanted in the first instance to open up a space for thinking about responsibility differently. And second, I didn't want to immediately revert to the debates about responsibilisation, which, while they have been very important and generated very many valuable and powerful insights, there's a way in which it's not helpful to collapse discussion of responsibility into discussions only of responsibilisation. It sort of leads to a thinning out of responsibility. If we understand responsibilisation as a strategy of self-making, a kind of emblematic way of becoming an entrepreneurial subject in the neoliberal era, and I was trying to get at another aspect, another dimension to responsibility, and to draw out the relational aspects of responsibility so that it is a responsibility towards others. And it was that dynamic, that pedagogic dynamic, that was intriguing to me and opened up and demanded that we open up new ways of thinking about it. Second, and related to that thinning out of notions of responsibility, I saw some of the public discourse and policy discourse about teaching as also representing a thinning out of the possibilities of responsibility, where teaching was increasingly understood in fairly instrumental ways as directed to spotting, diagnosing, measuring and enacting or ensuring learning takes place in the kinds of ways that Gert Biester has so persuasively analysed. So third, as a way of trying to prise open other ways of thinking about responsibility, I revisited some feminist discussions about ethics of care and feminist ethics. Now, there's been extensive critiques of many of those discussions, largely as part of a critique of what was seen as sort of the excesses of cultural feminism, a kind of valorization of women's ways of knowing, charges of essentialism. Now, all these discussions have been, and critiques have been valuable, but I felt that it warranted some revisiting of those and to look at the range of ways in which orientations towards others have been discussed in terms of education. And I discuss three different types of ideas in that paper. The third, and related to that, was the provocation put forward by Laurent Ballant in her account of precarious social life. And she argues that in these conditions of intensifying precarity, we are looking more and more to relations of interdependence. And she argues that in the contemporary era, there's been a shift from an idiom of power to an idiom of care for managing the social. And that insight or that argument, I think, is opened up ways for me to think about how how responsibility in education can be repositioned as part of an idiom of care, and as rethinking the relational dimensions of responsibility is part of trying to grapple with and put to work an idiom of care in the field of education. Thank you.